Yeah, that's good. All right.
So Adam, you guys remember when I first kind of joined Rotary and I did that presentation on Business for Good? So I was taking this class, it was called Business for Good, and it was like how to do this thing called Benefit Corporation, and we were kind of like these unpaid consultants, like helping, go through the checklist of to be B Corp certified. And so I gave that presentation on it. Well, that is actually where I met Adam. He was the startup that we were working with to get, B Corp certified. And then we kind of kept in touch. Like I had my friend JM, who's blind, and he's running an adaptive sports program. And so we kind of got together. We did some ski biking with my friend, and I think I've shown you guys the mountain biking and stuff. And so that's kind of how we met and everything. And lately he's been getting into adventure writing, I guess. Writing and writing. So I think I'll let him take it over from here and talk about what he's going to talk about.
Good. Everyone, thanks for having me today. My name is Adam White. I just recently put out my first published book. It is on, actually I gotta figure out how to use this real quick. There we go. So it's a book by Falcon Guides, which is a pretty large publisher here in the country. And it's all about hiking to different peaks here in New Mexico. This is the cover of the book. It just came out July 1st. So far it's been selling really well on Amazon. They sold out. So that was surprising. I sort of went into this with no expectations. And I just thought it would be a fun project to do. For me, it was going to force me to go climb mountains that I maybe hadn't, thought about climbing. Work on some photography skills and writing skills. I'm currently finishing my Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing right now. So that's sort of something I've been wanting to do. And just a little bit about me. I'm originally from South Louisiana. I grew up in Lafayette, in the swamp, swimming in the bayous. Never really cared for it much. Always kept leaving and going to find mountains and getting out here. After Katrina, I was in New Orleans for Katrina. After Katrina, that was a really good reason to get out permanently. And I relocated out to the Albuquerque area. I live in Zojos. So I've been there pretty much 20 years now. And actually, I think it's 20 years this August. It was the Katrina anniversary. So yeah, basically 20 years. And been hiking, exploring, rock climbing, mountain biking, pretty much anything outdoors here. I have, tried it or do it pretty frequently. Got a passion for exploring mountains, getting out there, desert peaks, alpine peaks, things like that. And I have this sort of thing that I've developed over 20 years is I feel like New Mexico is one of the most underrated states in the West when it comes to adventure tourism. My friends back home and elsewhere throughout the country, when they hear New Mexico, they think of desert. And I'm like, man, you guys have no clue what you're talking about. I get occasionally some of them come out here and their mind is just completely blown, especially if we go do a 13 or a 14, or a 13 or a 12 or something like that up and around Taos, and just get up into the Alpine. They didn't even know that existed. Even friends who live out west who didn't know that you can rock climb here. Couldn't believe that. So, we always take them rock climbing when they come visit. Through sort of a really serendipitous encounter at Outdoor Retailer Trade Show, I met the acquisition editor for Falcon Guides. We just ran into each other, started talking, sort of had a mutual friend that ended up introducing us more formally. And I sort of complained to him that they don't have many guidebooks on New Mexico. There's a hiking guidebook and a rock hounding book and a few other things, but there were really not a whole lot of books around that. And he said, well, you want to write one? And I was like, yeah, I've never done that before, but sure. And he was like, write me a sample chapter, send it to me, we'll review it, and if we like it, you got a contract. And so I went out and did South Peak on Sandia. That's like 7 miles from my house, so it was super convenient. Did didn't want to invest too much into it if I wasn't going to get a contract. And I wrote a book, wrote a chapter, took a few pictures, sent them in, and they sent me a contract. So they gave me 52 weeks to write 40 chapters. That's including the hiking, everything, all of it. I had one year basically to write this book. I signed the contract and had a panic attack. I had no clue what I was doing or how I was going to get 40 hikes, a minimum of 40 hikes in within a year. So that was my weekends for basically the better part of 22, 23.
This is still while you were like running other business.
Yeah.
Businesses.
Yeah, I was running my startup at the time, which was a software company, working with people with disabilities, and and this was also, the book was sort of a forced way to get me away from my desk. I was doing 70 plus hours a week behind my desk working on this program, and gaining weight, just not active, not happy, and I signed a contract. I got to do it. So that was like, okay, every weekend, minimum of a day, I got to get out, do a day hike, whatever it may be, and pick a peak to go climb. So it was a really good thing to just sort of fall into my life at that time. Some of the geography we have here. Obviously, we have the volcanic peaks, which you guys all know about if you live here in Los Alamos, the Alpine, and the desert summits. The desert summits were some of my favorite. This lower picture here is the upper ridgeline coming down from the summit of Big Hatchet Peak, which I didn't know anything about. I drove down there. It took 3 hours by dirt road to get to the trailhead. It was out there. My cell phone pinged off of Mexico cell towers because I was about 3 miles from the Mexico border. It's all the way down the Boot Hill. It's the most remote peak in the continental U.S. So it was interesting, and it was a mentally challenging peak. Not much trail to it, so you sort of find your way up, and it's very remote. So every step you take, you're like, if I roll an ankle, I'm out here for a while. So it was one of those things where you're very, very conscious about the exposure you have when you're out there. It was a great learning experience. One of the things I wanted to focus on also in the book was the diversity of our ecosystems. One of the things I love about being in the Albuquerque area is, I'm always like 15 degrees cooler than the city. But if you're in the city and it's hot, you can drive to the top of Sandia and it's 20 degrees cooler. I love that you can escape the heat. That is an amazing feature that New Mexico has. Growing up in Louisiana, you gotta drive to New Mexico to escape the heat. It's humid, it's hot. Now that I've been living here for 20 years, when it hits about 35% humidity, I notice the humidity. Yeah. I don't think it ever hit 35% humidity, and that's the other direction down in Louisiana. It was always somewhere between 75 and 100% humidity.
Where is that location?
So that is actually Heart Lake, up in the Latier Wilderness. That is arguably my favorite place in New Mexico. It's the diversity of the landscape is insane up there. There's some really beautiful peaks that you can hit in a huge sort of loop circle. There's a lot of water. A lot of times you're hiking in there and you sort of feel like you're in the Pacific Northwest as opposed to New Mexico. A lot of water. Heart Lake is a really, really beautiful spot. You can swim there. There's some great fishing, according to some fishermen that I ran into there. And then there's a whole bunch of other lakes just on the other side of that back ridge, sort of on the right. There's the Latier Lakes, which is a bunch of alpine lakes that sort of are terraced down. They're on private property. They're on the Rio Castilla land grant, but you can, I think it's like $20 per day per car, and you can go in and go fishing and hiking and explore there. It's a really beautiful area that they maintain pretty well.
So we can Google map this, but east or west of Navajo Dam, you'll say that area, which way?
Oh, so this is right by Cuesta.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is just north of Taos.
Okay.
Instead of when you get to Cuesta, instead of taking a right to go to Red River,
Yeah.
you take a right and then sort of a quick left, and there's a little highway that goes up sort of northeast from Cuesta, and that's where you can find this. There's a road to Cabresto Lake State Park. High clearance vehicle, Subaru can make it kind of thing. I saw a Honda Accord up there and I was impressed. They got up there. I don't know if there was oil in their engine anymore after that, But yeah, I mean, I would recommend at least the Subaru to get up there, but it's a beautiful lake that you can drive up to, go canoeing and fishing, and then from there is the trailhead where you hike about 4 miles into this lake.
Late spring, summer, early fall, don't try the cold time.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
I have friends that backcountry ski here,
Oh, okay.
and they hike in from
Okay.
there, but I don't know how far they make it up. I guess it all depends on how much snow's fallen.
Okay.
This is all, the road to Cabresto Lake is pretty much south facing, so I think it melts relatively quickly, and then once you're up in there, you can sort of take the trails around.
But if we get your book, we'll learn this.
Absolutely,
Okay.
I've got 4 in my pack here just so, but yeah, really, I wanted to highlight the diversity of the ecosystems here. So I focused on, basin and range peaks down in the south, like Cook's Peak and Big Hatchet, and then also a lot of the alpine and everything in between. Did Cabazon Peak and a few of the volcanic plugs out in the Rio Puerto Valley, because those are some of the most amazing mountains we have, I think. And then also some of cultural importance, like Otoe Peak right over here with Buckman Mesa. There's petroglyphs out there. There's a lot of archaeological, history that you can find there and research. And I wanted to, sort of highlight that as well. There's a lot of diversity in so many aspects here in New Mexico that sort of are highlighted in the book. Here's a few of the other peaks we climbed. So that's Cerro de Guadalupe on top. That's right by Cabazon Peak. Really, really fun, somewhat technical climb, but it's a hike, but it's still a good scramble with some exposure. I think it's one of the most beautiful mountains out in the Rio Puerto Valley. The middle one here is from Hermit Peak. That one's a really interesting one, and if you're very adventurous, once you get to the cliff where this overlooks to the east, you can actually scramble down to where the hermit used to live. There's this whole story, it's online, and I actually wrote a little bit about it in the book. But there's this Italian monk who came from Italy, came out here, and lived in a cave on the side of a cliff just below the summit of Hermit Peak. And they have a club in the Las Vegas area where there's like this club of men who hike up there at least once a year and spend some time in the cave. And then obviously we all know Cerro Pedernal, which is probably one of the most iconic peaks, here in New Mexico, thanks to Georgia O'Keeffe and many other photographers and artists. That's a really beautiful, fun mountain to climb as well. So, and then the foliage, we've got, a lot of people think it's only aspen trees, but if you head down to 4th of July Canyon and the Manzanos, you've got a huge area of Rocky Mountain maples that, if you hit it at peak time, you feel like you're in Vermont. I used to live in Vermont, so it's nice to sort of go out there. It's only 30 minutes from where I live, so it's an easy trek for me, and I love to go down there every fall and just experience the maples, turning. This is one of my favorite and most surprising views. This was my first time to the Gila. I went down and did Signal Peak and a couple other mountains there, and had no clue what the Gila had in store for me. That, it's always like 5-hour drive, so it's like a little bit too far than I want to go. But I made an effort to get down there and put a few peaks in the book, which, forced me to do that, but it was worth it. And unfortunately, I think this area is the area that has recently been, suffering from some fire, so yeah.
How's the fire in the Gila affected?
I haven't, that's a good question. I haven't kept up with exactly where it was, but I do know that, so this is right from below Signal Peak, looking down towards Los Altos, and that is where that fire came through, so this picture might be a completely different view next time. I know that whole area was evacuated, but I haven't heard a whole lot of updates. I mean, I know they got it under control, which is great, but it did do a lot of damage, so, yeah. And then some of the other things that I, heavily focus on in the book is guidance, for summiting here in New Mexico. We get a lot of people coming up from Texas and Louisiana. They think New Mexico it's easy, no big deal. I ran into a guy, he was probably about an hour from the summit of Santa Fe Baldy, but he thought he was way closer. And he had flown in from Houston the night before
Holy moly.
and hiked up. And he had tennis shoes on, he was running out of water, he had a pounding headache, didn't have enough food. I gave him all my water, all my food, all my ibuprofen. I told him to turn around, but he didn't. And that happened so frequently, especially on the 12 and 13,000 foot peaks here, always running into people who were underprepared. You know, always seeing in the news on Sandia people getting rescued, and a lot of times they're just hikers. These aren't rock climbers. These are just hikers who get in over their head on Marloes, you know, which people underestimate because it's right next to the city. So that's something I drive in as well. You know, being prepared, understanding where you're going. If you're coming from flat land like Houston at sea level, just wait 3 or 4 days. Spend some time in Santa Fe exploring, and then go up on the mountain. Because there's so many times that, you know, people are getting up there and they've got altitude sickness. You know, people don't think that happens here. It does. I've witnessed it quite a few times. So, you know, and just best practices about what to do when you're getting into these different situations are sort of all included in there. We also include maps. We have some online resource links in there as well. And, you know, sort of just local guide experience, just telling people about this, what to look for, where to go, the best way to get there. Sometimes, like this peak in particular, there's a set of Plate over by Rio Puerco. I did that and went in the winter. It was like -12 wind chill outside that day. It was amazing. But, you know, there's no trail to this peak. So for me, it was looking at it from how can I get someone to this summit as easily as possible and as safely as possible. And, you know, it's pretty much right up that ridge all the way to the right. But it was a fun, really fun climb, and just really cold, you know, and that's honestly the best way I think to experience the high desert is when it's under snow. So yeah, and then this is sort of my final pick here. This is from the Trompas Lakes. That's North Truchas Peak, and I did North Truchas in the book, and then also, if I could have fit it in here, but the trees were in the way, is Sheepshead Peak, which is another really, really amazing mountain. It does not get a lot of visitors. I think it's overlooked.
This is just amazing.
So, thank you.
So you were camping there, like on the edge of the lake there?
Yeah, you can camp there. I did it in a day, but yeah, you can camp there. I was talking to James about it. I want to hike paddle boards into these lakes and go paddleboarding.
Yeah.
It's 6 miles. It's probably the easiest alpine lakes to get to. 6 miles is a pretty easy trail to the lakes, and then it's a little bit more difficult to get to the peaks. But these are at like 11,800 feet. The lakes are. So they're pretty high alpine lakes, and they would be really fun to paddleboard. And I don't think anybody's ever done it. There is a guy who had an inflatable raft. So, but I think we'd be first on the paddleboards.
What did you see in wildlife?
Everything. Bighorn sheep. That was, you know, yeah. The knife edge ridge of Lake Peak between Deception and Lake Peak. I was scrambling that, came up over this big sort of rock outcropping, and there was a bighorn sheep 5 feet in front of me. And he just looked at me like I was crazy. I actually got a really good picture of him, and then he took off. And then I ended up meeting up with him again. He had gone down to the top of the Millennium Lift, and he was licking the salt off of the retaining wall there. And he didn't like me there. Like, he was not as friendly. He actually sort of pawed his hoof, you know, sort of in there and said, you know, stay away. But I got a few more pictures of him, and then sort of made my way around him. You know, but run into bears, have not seen mountain lions yet. I'm sure they've seen me. You know, I was always down in the range in the Boot Heel. They do have jaguars down there, and I was always like sort of looking out, sort of hoping that I would see one, but did not see it. Pretty sure if they saw me, they would definitely stay away. Yeah, exactly. You know, a lot of coyotes, you know, things like that. But and then, you know, really the bird life, especially in Latir, up in the Sangre de Cristos here, so many birds. The gray jays are really fun because they just like to follow you, and they know they're going to get fed if they do. So yeah.
You ever do the Disney princess and just like hold the food out and the birds just land on it?
My friend did. So I have a picture of him doing that. He had like, you know, some trail mix, you know, in his hands, and like the birds went and landed in his hands and ate.
So deer and elk, but did you see any moose come down in the northern parts?
No, I mean, I know we have Marty walking around.
Yeah.
You know, he's got a fan page on Facebook.
Yeah.
And he just reappeared again over by like just east of Espanola in the Badlands there. So he's, you know, they keep thinking he's going to go back north, and I guess he's sticking around. The weather's better, you know. But yeah, so no moose, but I do see elk.
Yeah.
You know, especially over here, you know, in the caldera,
Yeah.
in that area. I did a bike ride there recently and got in there and it was foggy and we didn't see them because they were up in the trees,
Yeah.
but they were like bugling.
Yeah.
And it sounded like I was in like some kind of medieval thing with like Vikings come out. It was a really interesting experience. But yeah, deer, elk, those are pretty common as well. And then I did see some what are they called? The oryx.
Yeah.
Oryx.
Yeah, I saw oryx too. That was really interesting. It makes you feel like you're in Africa when you see those things. So that
Down
was really
south.
cool. Yeah, down
Yeah.
south. Because they're pretty common.
Yeah.
Like down by TRC and that area, going towards like Ruidoso. Yeah, and I did a few peaks down around the Ruidoso area. And I wanted to do Sierra Blanca because it's the only ultra prominent peak we have in the state, which means it's 5,000 feet of elevation prominence. Unfortunately, the week that I was going to go was the week after that fire last year, or 2 years ago. And yeah, so that one got shut down and wasn't able to do it. But I am trying to convince the editor to give me a volume 2 on this because there's definitely more than 50 peaks. To climb here in this state. So I'm working on a list there. And then I'm currently right now working on a second book for them, which is a guidebook to 40 waterfalls. So we're doing hikes to waterfalls here, which is a really fun experience.
Just in New Mexico.
Yeah, just in New Mexico.
Like you're not back in Niagara. and
Oh,
places
no,
like
no,
that.
no.
Walking
They don't pay me
somewhere.
enough to travel
Okay.
that far.
Okay.
I didn't
So-
realize that New Mexico had 40, so you said your book is 40 peaks, basically,
So
40
if
hikes, 40.
It's 40, yeah, so technically it's 40 hikes to 50 peaks.
Oh, wow.
Because some of them where you hit multiple peaks, right?
Okay.
So the Magdalenas, I did south and north Baldy. So both of those summits in one hike. I did the Wheeler Cirque route, which is basically, Wheeler, then Simpson, all the way around, basically Bighorn and Sin Nombre, and comes all the way back around to Kachina. I think he hit 6 or 7 peaks above 12,000 feet and 13,000 feet there. That was a lot of fun. That was a scary one. It's probably the most difficult, like technical, hiking. It's more class 3, class 4 scrambling. We wore helmets. I had a friend with me. I didn't do that one by myself. And we even brought rope in case we had to bail out at some point because it was a 12 hours of hiking, and I think we did like almost 8,000 feet of elevation gain between all the peaks, just linking them up. By the time we got back to the Jeep, we were just annihilated.
So of the 50 peaks that you highlight in your book, what percentage would you characterize as accessible to average people? That someone that is in relatively good shape, would have enough sense to bring enough water and food and everything.
Yeah.
But, not necessarily like have any experience climbing or
Right.
anything like that.
I'd say well over 50% of them are just average hiker, go out for a hike. Some of them are easy, kid-friendly kind of things
Okay.
where families can go to. I wanted to get a full range of sort of difficulty level in there. So some are considered easy, like Otoe Peak and Buckman Mesa, really easy hike for kids. It's short. They get to the top. There's a beautiful view of the the Rio Grande below and all of that. Aspen Peak, which is up in Santa Fe. It's like 2.5 miles to the summit, and then it's all downhill from there. So there's a few that are that are very easy, very kid friendly. Some of them aren't necessarily about achieving the summit, but seeing some of the historical things along the way, like petroglyphs. And then there are some that are very difficult, and I'd say most of them are just moderate. If you're able to just hike on a trail for 5 miles, 6 miles, you're able to do it. Yeah.
It's amazing that there are that many that are accessible to people.
Oh yeah. No, there's a lot that are very accessible.
And this,
Yeah.
so was this Trucius here, or?
So that's North Trucius Peak.
Okay.
It's actually, North Trucius Peak is really just sort of hidden behind that, but that's sort of that
Get
north
the idea
wall
of
of
where that
Trucius,
is.
yeah.
That's really something.
Yeah, and you sort of go up, like to get up there, once you get to the lakes, there's no more trail. So you sort of, see where that snow couloir is?
Mhm.
There's one like that, but it's just hidden behind this tree, and that's what you go up. And
If you want to keep going higher.
yeah, this was done on June 25th of last year. And on a whim, I decided to bring my micro spikes and an ice axe just in case. And I was glad I did because there was still snow and I wouldn't have been able to do either one of those Sheep's Head or North Trutris without it. It was a sort of a sheet of ice, you know, that you could kick through, but having spikes and an axe just to sort of, you know, for safety was a good call.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, mhm.
So in your book, do you have which hikes are like super popular? Like really crowded hike? Are there crowded hikes in New Mexico?
We're in New Mexico. That's what's great about it. And hopefully my book brings more people, but doesn't make them crowded. I don't think it's going to get, you know, be that successful. But yeah, it's you know, after you hike a half mile on any of these trails, you don't really see anybody unless it's, you know, one or two other hikers, you know.
Well, my husband and I, we're from Colorado, and we did 14ers like all the time.
Oh yeah.
And we did like Grand Lake, going like a 20-mile hike up and over the Continental Divide, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
going around. And so, and then he's gone to Longs Peak, you know, in Estes Park, several times. But then they become more and more crowded.
Yeah,
You know,
you have to get-
like they're in Colorado.
Yeah.
Some of these trails are just
Oh yeah,
really
like Maroon
popular.
Bells, you can't even get a parking pass. Like you have to get a parking pass like a month in advance to just go hike there, and you know, or you have to like try to hitch a ride, like hitchhike up with someone with a pass. I mean, I did Mount Snuffles out of Durango like 2 years ago, and I felt like I was passing somebody every like quarter mile. You know,
Yeah,
it
we
was
did-
it was really busy. you
We
know.
did Maroon Bells, but we went up over Maroon Bells into Crested Butte.
Oh, nice.
And
Yeah.
then we had to find a taxi to take us all the way back around. And it was a limousine taxi, the only taxi in Crested Butte. We spent the night, but then, you know, coming all the way back around to
Yeah.
our car at Maroon Bells. But no, that's nice. So in your book, do you like have easy, medium, expert, or do you
Yeah,
go by region?
they're all
or-
rated. They're divided up by like sort of north, central, and southern.
Mhm.
But every chapter, like in the very beginning, tells you like this is easy, this is moderate. You know, elevation gain, trail type, sort of everything is included in there as like a snapshot of what to expect, what to bring. Is there going to be water on the trail? Is there not? You know, those kind of things. There's like sort of this bit of a snapshot of all these different, you know, sort of, you know, descriptions, and then there goes into a more in-depth, like written narrative about where to go, what you're going to see, that kind of thing. And yeah, so it gets pretty detailed, but then you can also just sort of look at it. You know, what I liked was I did very little research on most of these peaks. I just wanted to go in and, you know, I was like, okay, where's the trailhead? I want to get there. Mileage to have a, you know, general understanding of how much commitment I have. And then other than that, I didn't really want to read anyone else's writing online or elsewhere. I just wanted to be able to create my own, you know, perspective of what I'm getting into and then put that into the book. So, yeah.
How did you decide which peaks you were gonna do?
You know, some of them, I mean, many of them I'd already done, right? So I just went back and did them again. And I just really liked them. You know, aesthetics, what they look like, you know, views, challenge, you know, some were easy. That's why I purposely chose some of those that were just easier. You know, my parents live here. They're like making a list of ones they want to do. So yeah, you know, but so you guys gotta head out.
You gotta have back to
Yeah, we'll
work.
close
Yeah,
up
we
the
gotta close
meeting,
it
and
out.
anyone who's gotta
What,
go
what's the
can
title
go, and
of your
we'll.
book again?
It's New Mexico Summits. Yeah.
Got some. You wanna get one right now?
How much are your books?
I'm selling them for 20
Okay.
because I know most people just have a 20. they're normally $24.95, I think, is what that's what it looks like right there. So thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, really great talk. Thank you.
We'll do the four-way test and then close this out. Robbie, you wanna take us through the four-way test?
Things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Right, all right, thank you. Rotary is
Your daughter. She's, okay, so they've done good.
But yeah, if you wanna hang out and chat. Yeah, thanks for coming. Next time you're in town,